So what do we know about empires, ancient ones, modern ones, and the Levant? For most of ancient history, if we look at a map, you have the East African empires of Egypt and Kush along the Nile. You have Anatolia to the northwest, and then you have Babylon and Persia to the east. And for the most part, there was very little interaction between those empires. There was long distance trade, and that's really where the population started to build up in the Levant. It was a stopover between the three main huge population centers. So it wasn't really until the New Kingdom in Egypt that it became a real political player, because this area was colonized by the New Kingdom Egyptian Empire. And you have the Amarna letters where the vassal kings were writing back to the pharaoh asking for protection against I believe it was Assyrian kings. So there's a whole history of when it became a colonial area for empires. The Egyptian Empire was trying to control trade. If you look at the growth of Egyptian hegemonal power, you can see that like the first trade networks that were dealing with the sea were in the Red Sea, right? So all of the oldest docks would be all along the East African side of the Red Sea, but there are also a few on the Saudi Arabian side of the Red Sea. But mainly Egypt controlling that area so they could serve as a middleman between Anatolia and Babylon. So as these three kind of power centers were rising, whichever one of them controlled the Levant, controlled the trade between the three. And if you want to add Saudi Arabia as a fourth. So from the New Kingdom till the Bronze Age collapse, it was Egypt that dominated the Levant. And you can see that with the Bronze Age collapse and all the pillaging that came from the Sea People, as they were called, all of the empires that were contemporary at the time fell. Although there were other factors involved, there were like environmental factors, there were famines, there were all kinds of other things that were happening. You can see this is when that area, the Levant, started becoming important on the world stage, just for trade and military reasons, not for anything to do with religion. In fact, the oldest diplomatic note that we have between two kingdoms or empires or whatever you want to call it relates to the Battle of Kadesh. And there's a monument there in ancient Egyptian and translated into ancient Hittite. So that's the genesis of the Levant being a center of world politics. But with the Bronze Age collapse, it becomes a contested area between Nubians, Assyrians, Persians. This is a lot of the stuff that you can find in the Bible, right? A lot of the Old Testament describes this time period. But then it was conquered by the Phoenicians, and they had a long dominance, and they became super rich and dominated this area all the way up until Pompey the Great conquered that whole area up to Syria. So now it was Rome that was holding it. And it really begins to take on a religious significance with the expulsion of the Jews from Rome to people of that religion. But as far as it being this second dynamic of it being this religious center, this contested religious center that has all these eschatology people running wild, that really comes into effect with Charlemagne and his followers. And Rome expanded its religious significance with Constantine, but the idea of world powers really fighting over it, really the potential for that comes with the rise of Charlemagne, where people would have a religious claim to the land. That was followed by the Muslim conquest, and then however many crusades, 4. But even more than that, but officially 4. Venice and the Ottoman Empire used that area to great effect in terms of shutting out other people to world trade or other competitors to world trade monopolies. So nobody should have been surprised when the British Empire decided to take this area for their own objectives. And the conquest of the Levant by the British Empire had little to do with any person with Jewish descent. All empires want to control this area for basically the exact same reason. The specific change but the general strategic advantage for controlling that area remains the same. Every empire, no matter which it is, ancient ones or modern ones, they're all trying to do the same thing. If we're talking about maritime empires, so we're saying post the New Kingdom, they want maritime supremacy, they want resource control, they want a trade monopoly and special privileges, and they want mind control. And by that, I mean coercion power, persuasion power, propaganda power, might. And it would seem that if you look at what an empire needs to survive, you get a better explanation for why America has the relationship with Israel that it has.
I've been down this road before, but now I got my shit together.